The chair would then call up Whitney, and I am not going to make an attempt at the last name. Help me out.
It's not as hard as it looks. It's Siddiqi.
Siddiqui. Okay, yes. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Thank you.
Welcome to committee. You may begin when you're ready.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon now, Chair Wilken, Vice Chair White, Ranking Member Brown, and members of the House Government Oversight Committee. My name is Whitney Siddiqi, and I'm the Community Affairs Director for the Ohio chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations, known as CAIR-Ohio. I'm from Cincinnati, the 31st District, so Representative Kelly is my representative, and I am here today testifying on behalf of CAIR-Ohio. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you to present this opposition testimony for HB 479. CAIR is America's largest civil liberties and advocacy organization for American Muslims. At CAIR-Ohio, we defend the rights of Ohio Muslims, including their voting rights. And that is why we have been working since the beginning of summer to fight for fair maps. It is critical as a community that so often experiences institutional discrimination and is so often either ignored or vilified by elected officials that we have access to fair representation and our votes are not diluted through gerrymandering. Yet, despite these efforts and despite the reforms Ohioans overwhelmingly voted for to secure a fair redistricting process this year, our leaders have failed us. The state legislative redistricting process was bad enough, but the congressional map drawing process has proven to be a complete failure thus far. Ignoring constitutional deadlines, giving very little notice to the public for these hearings, ensuring they are not accessible to the majority of Ohioans, and allowing the public and mapping experts less than 24 hours to review one of the proposed maps before, again, the poorly scheduled hearing. These are just a few of the most egregious examples. And I just want to state that I'm here on behalf of CAIR-Ohio. I am not an attorney. I'm not an expert on population and redistricting and a constitutional expert. But I don't think you have to be an expert to look at this map and see the issues. And I also don't think you have to be an expert to come before this committee and present concerns. The redistricting process has crucial implications for future elections and policies that fundamentally shape our lives as Ohioans. Such an important responsibility necessitates a thorough engagement process that is measured, not rushed, with perspectives from everyday citizens who know their communities best and third-party mapping experts who understand the constitutional criteria under which to draw maps. And so I would ask at that point also if we can have more hearings. I would ask the committee to please schedule additional hearings so that all those who could not be here today would be able to be present. Unfortunately, the map proposed in HB 479 violates the constitutional criteria and the reforms Ohioans passed to limit gerrymandering. Districts are gerrymandered in this map to favor one party overwhelmingly over another. And when we look at what a fair map would be, we believe this map would have 8 Republican-leaning seats and 7 Democratic-leaning seats because that is consistent with the way that Ohioans vote. This map also divides Hamilton County, where I live, into 3 congressional districts and lumps Cincinnati in with Warren County. And so another question I would ask the committee is why? Warren County, much of Warren County and then Cincinnati are quite a bit different in terms of issues, voting preferences, demographics. And by doing that, again, as in the current congressional map, Cincinnatians and people across Hamilton County, their voting power will be diluted, especially communities of color. Furthermore, that proposed district, District 1, as well as proposed District 14, are not compact as required by the Constitution. Near Columbus, Hilliard, and Dublin, where one of Ohio's largest mosques is located and a large Muslim community lives in neighborhoods around that mosque, and I will note party control is a bit of a toss-up in those areas, have been lumped in with communities like Bremen, over an hour away. It's 94% white and 73% voting Republican, according to good old Dave's redistricting. And, you know, with just a few hours to analyze this map and prepare this testimony, because of course I think many of us worked a full day yesterday. We saw the news come out about the map. We rushed to look at it as best as we could and kind of put this together. I drove from Cincinnati early this morning. I've spent my work day here. So again, I haven't had the time to do a deep dive into the map, but just by looking at it, clearly Toledo, another area where a large Muslim community lives, and other areas across the state have been gerrymandered in this map. I think we can all see the pattern here. And no matter which party you or your community is affiliated with, your vote should have the same power as your neighbors, your colleagues, your family members. But this map suppresses the votes of too many people, too many in urban areas, people of color, and those voting against the party which is currently in power. It is clear this map was drawn with one goal: to keep one party in power, not to create districts in which voters choose which party receives power. I've shared this before in previous testimony, but I will say it again. We are constantly hearing about the extreme divides in America. And I don't believe this would be the case if our districts were drawn fairly, if our elections were truly competitive, if every vote, especially those of marginalized communities like the Muslim community, had equal voting power. Advocates and Ohioans like myself are tired and we're frustrated, but we're not giving up. I oppose this map and any gerrymandered map that violates the Constitution and suppresses Ohioans' voting rights. Again, I would ask this committee to put forth for public feedback and pass a 10-year bipartisan map, to please schedule additional hearings so that you can hear from Ohioans across the state. Thank you for your time. That concludes my testimony.
Thank you for your testimony, Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. So I wanted to talk about what you said about Hamilton County. And to the chairman's point, the city of Cincinnati is kept together. But just because the city of Cincinnati is kept together doesn't mean the community hasn't been split apart. So in a place like Hamilton County, where we have Cincinnati in one district that also includes all of Warren County, but then you have suburbs like North College, well, they wouldn't consider themselves a suburb, for the record. North College Hill, Mount Healthy, Springfield Township, going in a district that goes, clear up the west side of the state. And then you've got communities like Amberley, Silverton, that are in a district that goes farther east. Can you talk about the impact that that's going to have? Because while the city of Cincinnati may be kept whole, the community is split apart.
Yes, Chair Wilken and Representative Kelly. I think that it's important to kind of, when looking at this map, look at all of the issues present at once. So it's not just that, Cincinnati is together, so this district is great. It's also how we're combining communities with other communities. And so combining Cincinnati, although it's kept whole in this, with Warren County just does not make sense. It dilutes the voting power of Cincinnatians, and Cincinnatians have felt for some time that they're not being represented in Congress adequately. We are currently split apart in a split apart, but with a similar goal to dilute those votes from the past round of redistricting. And so by either splitting apart communities or combining communities with other areas who do not share the same issues, who do not have the same interest, or just logically, those are not similar communities. They're not connected in those ways. It dilutes the voting power of those people. And when we're talking about Cincinnati, which is an urban area, it has much larger communities of color combined with something like Warren County, or to some of those counties to the east, completely different. Those counties are majority white. They're voting majority Republican. And so By doing that, again, you're taking away people's voting power, and kind of cracking and packing like everyone's been talking about today. I don't know if that answered your specific question.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, thank you for that. So I guess my follow-up would be, do you think that the citizens of Hamilton County would be better served to have a Cincinnati-anchored congressional district that includes most of Hamilton County, or by a district that splits the county into 3 separate districts as is being proposed right now?
Chair Wilken and Representative Kelly, I do not think Hamilton County is best served by splitting up the county and combining them with different communities that do not share the same interests.
Any other follow-up? Are there any other questions? Representative Swearingen, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony today. One question specifically in your testimony that's written at the top of page 2, it says constitutional criteria states that districts must be proportionally consistent with vote totals. Where in Article 19 does it say that?
Yes, Chair Wilken and Representative Swearinger. So I do have an amended copy of my testimony, which I will email to you all. And the emailed copy, that does include that. I did not state that verbally today because it is missing a point about the 4-year map. And so I think what we've already achieved in this room of landing on the actual constitutional criteria is that if a bipartisan 10-year map cannot be passed and a 4-year map is passed with simple majority vote, then the constitutional criteria does state that the maps cannot unduly favor one party over another. And so that is an edit in my testimony that I will submit, an amended written version. But I would argue that goal either way remains the same. So either a 10-year bipartisan map needs to be passed, or a 4-year map that does not unduly favor one party over the other. And so either way, when we're looking at this map right now, I don't believe it's going to be passed through, a bipartisan vote. And I also don't believe that I do believe that it unduly favors one party over another. And so if that were to be the case for this map to be passed for 4 years, I do believe it would then be violating constitutional criteria. I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but that is my understanding of the criteria.
Follow-up?
Quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman. When it comes to Article 19 and the 4-year map, if that was the route that this happened to go, constitutionally, can one party be favored over another under that map?
Sorry, Chair Wilken and Representative Swearinger, can you repeat the question?
Under Article 19, if there's a 4-year map, it says that you can't have a party unduly favored. But wouldn't that be fair to say that one party can be favored?
Chair Wilken, Representative Swearinger, yes. So I believe that if it reflected Ohioans' voter preferences, then yes, one party would be favored slightly, the Republican Party. And so that is all many advocates are asking for, is just that it reflects the state's voter preferences, that it is fair. It's not that Democrats should have more over Republicans. It's not that Republicans should have more than Democrats. It's just that it is fair. And so fair based on our state's history, our voter preferences would be that Republicans would be slightly favored over Democrats.
Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony. I've got a couple questions, and, I think they're straightforward questions. As I've read through your testimony, and we've heard so many numerous times, everybody wants to keep like-minded people together. And I've asked the question, is that a criteria for drawing maps? Yes or no?
Chair Wilken and Representative Jones. So I don't know that I actually specifically said like-minded. If we have recording, someone can correct me. I do know that what we've been advocating for is that communities of shared interest, communities with shared issues, who, for instance, might have an issue of pollution in their community. That's a shared interest, right? And so that may not just be this neighborhood, that could be this neighborhood over here. And so you're looking at many different criteria. I did not say that that is necessarily a constitutional criteria, but what we've been advocating for is when we're talking about fair maps and districts that represent the people of Ohio and that fulfill the spirit of reforms that Ohioans overwhelmingly voted for, we are looking at keeping communities of shared interest together, making sure that especially people of color are not cracked apart. I would argue that intentionally and strategically cracking apart communities of color would go against the Voting Rights Act. Again, I'm not a lawyer, and so I would have to get more into that, but I would argue that that would be a true issue to deal with, because communities of color have to have the right to elect representatives of their choosing, right? And if we are strategically and intentionally cracking apart, packing different communities, drawing the lines in that way, then that does go against the Voting Rights Act. But to sum it up, I would just say that we can argue all day long about what like-minded means, or if that's the correct phrasing to use. I don't think I use that phrase, but it would be very disappointing, I think, if this committee and the joint committee that ends up coming together to hopefully pass this map, if we simply try to get by with the bare minimum of what is required. And even still, there are many of us who don't think that, a map like this would meet those requirements in other ways. So, for instance, several districts are not compact. That is a clear constitutional criterion listed. But if that is all we're looking at, if we don't care about drawing a map that fairly represents Ohioans, that allows Ohioans to truly pick who represents them, to elect their officials, not the other way around, then that is, that I think that presents a situation that is really disheartening and is not what this committee should be aiming for.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair of the witness, that was, I guess, a drawn out. You may not have said like-minded people in your testimony. I will clarify that and give you that. But one of my frustrations as I've listened to the testimony today, we found reasons not to agree what's fair. And you've brought up a point about the positioning of mosques and different communities of faith, which I respect. But, I think we can all agree that we can sit here and have conversations all day long we're not going to meet all these criteria that we are making up. And there are a bound set of criteria that was passed by the voters. And I think we're getting away from that, and we're trying to let our personal preferences muddy the water, so to speak. But my question to you is this, and this is one that's been burning in me. If you would take a poll of most of the people in the state of Ohio and ask let's say 10 people who their U.S. congressman is, how many do you think would know who their congressman is?
Chair Wilken and Representative Jones, I have no idea what people will respond to that. I'm not sure what that has to do with the map at hand. I'm just not sure. I don't want to speculate. It depends on who you talk to.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Well, I guess my point is this. We all are here today for the sake of trying to get fair maps, or what we believe are fair maps. And I think we can all agree that we're going to disagree. And my question of asking you that is in my time I've spent, most people do not even know who their state representatives are. If you're out on the street asking that question. And I'm saying this in terms of this. We can sit here and split hairs all day. We can have disagreements. But we have to remember there are criteria that we have to adhere to. And sitting here saying we want to be able to keep communities together, I agree with all that. But sometimes it is totally impossible to make these lines the way we want them to be. I mean, and that's just a reality, and I think we're getting too far away from that. And I mean, in your testimony, you bring up some very valid points, and I respect them, but I think the point I'm asking is, where do we stop and say, look, this is the best we're going to get based upon what we have? How much time can we spend?
Chair Wilken, Representative Jones, I understand that not every single community or Ohioan will be pleased with the outcome of any map. That's not, I think, what any of us here are asking for today. Well, first, I think we can start with actually just presenting a map that meets constitutional criteria. That has not happened yet. At the very basic level, we can start with that. But following that, the process itself has been a failure. I think when we're talking about, well, we just need to chalk it up to not everyone's going to be satisfied. We've been working for months to try to make this a better process, to actually help this committee and whatever committee comes together to pass this map to have real data, to have community input, not to please every single person, but to do this in a transparent, fair, well thought out strategic way, which is what Ohioans voted for. That has not happened. And so we're not here asking, draw the map exactly this way to please every single person in Ohio. But there have been no good faith efforts made, to be honest. Like, no good faith efforts have been made on the part of our leaders to put forth a map that even attempts to draw districts that fairly represent Ohioans. And so I just think that is a scapegoat to say we can't please everyone and we need to move on. This map at hand does not even attempt to fairly represent Ohioans. It clearly violates constitutional criteria. There are at least 2 districts. Again, I haven't had the time to dive in immensely into the map, but there are at least 2 districts, including Cincinnati's district, that are not compact. I mean, that's basic constitutional criteria 101 right there, just need to be compact. Okay, well, we already aren't meeting that. And then we look at what other things do we need to meet. It may not be spelled out exactly there that communities of color don't need to be split up, but it does say that communities of color in the Voting Rights Act need to be able to elect people of their choice. If we are gerrymandering the state of Ohio, people of color can't do that. And so that is violating the Voting Rights Act. And so I don't know how else to convince or to present why it is needed that we actually make a good faith effort to draw these districts in a fair way. But drawing the districts in a way in which, some analysis say 13-2, some, different analysis, but overwhelmingly are favoring one party, and they're drawn strategically to do that. That is gerrymandering. And that is what Ohioans voted against.
Representative Jones, I give you one more follow-up.
No.
Please be concise in your question and concise in your answer.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Ohio Constitution, Article 19, Section 01, Section C, Paragraph 3, Subparagraph B states essentially that in a 4-year map there shall not be an undue split of governmental units, giving preference to keeping whole counties, then townships and municipal corporations. So just focusing on the counties part of this, does the proposed map keep Hamilton County whole?
Chair Wilken and Representative Brown, I believe, no, it does not. It splits Hamilton County into 3 districts.
And a follow-up, Chair, does the map keep Summit County whole?
Say that again?
Does the map keep Summit County whole, Akron?
Chair Wilken and Representative Brown, I believe it does not, no.
Does the map keep Cuyahoga County whole?
No.
No further questions.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.